South Africa is very likely to be booted out of the benefits of AGOA, that special treaty that allows African countries special export access to the US market. Since its enactment in 2000, the African Growth and Opportunity Act has been at the core of US economic policy and commercial engagements with the continent. And essentially what it does is it allows eligible sub-Saharan African countries duty-free access to the US market for over 1,800 products. But there has always been a quid pro quo. Do as we wish and act like our friends, or else. Well, our next guest says the current tensions between Pretoria and Washington may not be resolved soon, and we need to start preparing for the worst. Sam Mkokeli is a columnist and contributor to the Sunday Times. It's my pleasure to welcome you to 702 Breakfast.
Thank you so much, Bongani. Good morning to you and the listeners.
You're a veteran journalist. You're a former political editor of the Business Day. You are the spokesperson for the now defunct Department of Public Enterprises. You've kept an eye on all these developments, and as you wrote in the Sunday Times yesterday, it is all about the economy, stupid.
Yeah, sadly, Bongani, it does look like South Africa is in trouble in the context of the relationship with the US, but it didn't start now, and this thing has been a long time coming. We've messed up a few things in managing the relationship, and we tend to insult them every time we get an opportunity. So we now have to manage this crisis that has flared up in recent time, especially with the reintroduction of Donald Trump in the US.
My criticism of South Africa's approach has been that we've based our thinking on what is clearly an outdated model. The idea that we can reason our way through this, that we can explain it, we can provide the facts. It doesn't appear to me that this president nor his administration are interested in that.
Yeah, look, we have not had good foreign policy in a long time. During the Mbeki era, you could critique him. This focus on Africa, South, when the West were our biggest trading partners. Since then, there is nothing to critique. It's really been moving from one topic to another, and they tend to be a crisis. That's the nature of our foreign policy. And in recent times, issues relating to Palestine and Israel have been really problematic for how South Africa has handled them. If South Africa doesn't put the economy at the front of its considerations in what it's doing, if you look at the Palestine-Israel issue, there is no consideration that we're going to mess up our one of our biggest trading partners. In fact, if you look at the US and Europe, we put them together as a group. Those are our biggest trading partners, and that's where our bread is buttered, and not China, not Palestine, and not anything else. So it's well and good to feel good about defending human rights in Palestine, but not when they mess up your economy domestically. But also that Palestine story was not consistent. There's genocide everywhere. So why is this one more important than the rest of the human rights violations across the world?
But we've managed those diplomatic and economic considerations before, and I'll take you back to a number of examples, whether it was the Dalai Lama all those years ago, our recognition or our relationship with Taiwan. We've managed the relationship with China quite deftly and not put human rights at the center of that engagement because economic considerations, at least the argument was, were more important.
Yeah, of course. That's what we did with the Dalai Lama thing. And also, there were a lot of critics who said the South African government shouldn't be dancing to the Chinese tune in that matter. It had given up its sovereignty. For example, we didn't give him a visa to come to South Africa. And it offended no one less than Desmond Tutu at the time, and who prayed for the ANC's demise for the manner in which it had handled that. So we are all over the show. We are chasing our tails when it comes to a foreign policy, but also that's a reflection of our domestic policy. Foreign policy is about trade, it's about growing your economy and nothing else. So we just don't get at the very basic when it comes to foreign policy, but we shouldn't be surprised. That's how we're running this economy in South Africa.
So our latest plan is to send envoys to friendly capitals and then, of course, eventually to Washington itself. But we've been doing this for the better part of a year now. Whatever message they are spreading isn't landing.
It's going to be tougher with Trump. I mean, it's a very complex man, also very simple man. It's about self-interest, not even the American interest. So we're just going to have to accept that AGOA is gone, and we have to look at ways to send goods and services to the U.S. With tariffs likely and some sanctions possibly. We offended him and his politics over the Israel issue, and it actually suits him that there's a little economy at the bottom of Africa that he needs to take on. He needs to bully, and that helps gives lots of testosterone to his MAGA politics. So we're the perfect case to be shown up and abused by him. And America loses very little in terms of economics when it comes to trading with Africa. Really, what America gets from us is minuscule in the bigger scheme of things. We're not even 1%. When you look at only the AGOA goods we send over there. So he's going to abuse us, and so we have to get used to that fact and look at spread across the world the products we can, and also send to the U.S. People are still going to buy our products. They're still going to buy the cars we produce and the fruits, and it's the American consumer that's going to suffer anyway. So the politics around it, we just need a very clear eye, and based on trade information, economics, more than politics and wanting to feel good and stay on in an AGOA that we probably should have outgrown a long time ago anyway.
Yeah, because ultimately the point you're making is much of the conversation the last week has been blaming AfriForum, and they can take a few hits for that, but ultimately the government in South Africa has scored some own goals there. So we are due to host G20 foreign ministers this week and finance ministers the week after. Marco Rubio and Scott Bessent are not likely coming.
Yeah, I mean, we have to count the number of foreign ministers that come this week, and that will tell you what's going on in the world. People don't take us seriously anymore, and even more so now when we keep messing up the most important economy and their allies. It's not just the U.S. that we're playing with. It's countries that have been allied with the U.S. for forever, and they look around before they take decisions at the fora like the G20. If there's a particular wedding and there's a conflict coming out of a particular issue, so they look around and they check if the U.S. is around and what is the U.S. stand. And when the U.S. isn't around as the leader of the pack, you've got a problem. The weight that comes with South Africa hosting the AGOA and driving an agenda then falls by the wayside. So we're just going to have to count those foreign ministers this week that come or don't come, and the finance ministers later on. And Trump, do you think Trump is going to want to come to a country like South Africa? It's important that the U.S. is in the G20 as the world's biggest economy, and they come to the events in South Africa and they take part in the resolutions. But also they get to be the rotating chair next year, so we hand over to them. It's quite for South Africa's program to be seen to be a success. We need the U.S. in the room, but we likely will not have the U.S. in the room.
I mean, there's no successful summit without meaningful U.S. participation. Here's a question, though, for you, Sam. I mean, the conditions for participating in AGOA, or indeed the quid pro quo I referred to in my introduction, was always that countries must obviously eliminate barriers to the U.S. in terms of trade and investment, but also enact policies to reduce poverty, combat corruption, and protect human rights. On that alone, we're not guilty.
Yeah, you think we're not guilty, but we still have to look after U.S. interests. So the incidents around Lady R, for example, the docking of the
Russian ship.
Yeah, that's right. So South Africa did a whitewash investigation that said there was nothing wrong with it, and it ended there. Contrary to culture in this country, it was not even an open commission that we could all watch, like we did Zondo, we did the Falam Commission, then Wepe Commission into FNB. So this one is a closed investigation, and we got very few pages. Did we even get a few pages of the report? We didn't get much detail from the government as to what it is that would happen. Then they will claim security. I don't know what security risk it could be. One of the biggest questions about Lady R is that it brought in a particular load, and it left with a heavier load. And that wasn't explained satisfactorily, and the U.S. had a problem with it. So we have been offending them and their interest for quite a while now, and our statements. I mean, we are quite aggressive in our statements for a country that wants to stay in AGOA.
So some people have said, well, hang on, why don't some of our so-called allies step into the breach?
They probably will at some stage, but they will look after their domestic interests first. They're not going to jump out. I mean, you're not going to get China coming out to back South Africa. They have to look at what it is that they have to do. They'll be very tactical about when to come out. But it probably would be a very important strategy for South Africa to persuade the allies and to hide behind them where possible and also gain some strength. I mean, it makes a lot of sense what the government is planning to do, sending people to important parts of Europe and China before going to the US.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is not going to care. I mean, that makes no difference to Donald Trump whether South Africa is the backing of China or not. I mean, if he wants to zap us with tariffs, he will do that. Whether or not America benefits is a different thing. And this is a bully who's just trying to put his big thumb on us.
Sam, for the average person, for the man on the street, why is this even a concern? What would life after AGOA look like for South Africa?
Look, it's a political and strategic thing, but in terms of trade, initially it wouldn't be a big thing. Because car manufacturers like the Mercedes-Benz in London will still be able to send their cars to the US. But the difference is that if you want to invest a heavy production in South Africa, bricks and mortar, then you're going to have to think twice. If you're thinking long-term, the effectors are thinking how to invest in 10 years' time. They think about it now. So they're not going to invest in where there's out. So it does affect jobs. In the long term, it affects confidence in the economy. The rand is going to tank when finally that comes. So confidence in the economy, people aren't going to invest because there is this doubt around it. While the issue is more political and strategic than economics at the same time.
It is consequential. Appreciate your time, Sam Mkokeli, veteran journalist and columnist and contributor to the Sunday Times.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions.
your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.